So today we're looking at solving equations, quadratic equations. So what we do first, we use the following steps. First thing is you move all of the terms to one side, leaving the zero on the other. Then we factorise the equation and then set each factor to zero and solve. So we'll do a few examples here. We've got these 4 examples to start off with. So the first one's already factorised. So what we do is just let each of the brackets equal to 0, because when you multiply anything by 0, you get 0. So if any of these terms here equals 0, the whole thing will be equal to 0. It's like saying 5 times 0 equals 0 is the same as 0 times 5 equals 0. Okay, so if we let each of those things equal 0, then we get subtract 7 from both sides and we end up with x equals negative 7. And if we add 2 to both sides, we get x equals 2. So if we look at b here, we need to factorise first. So we need to look at factors of negative 6. So one has to be positive and one negative, and they need to multiply to get, add together to get the negative 5. So if we look at what combination of those ones adds together to get negative 5, it will be positive 1 and negative 6. So we're going to put those numbers in the brackets, and again, now we've got 2 brackets. So we let each of the brackets equal 0, and then we solve for those. So we subtract 1 from each side, we get x is negative 1. For the next one, we got x minus 6 equals 0, so therefore x is positive 6. For C, slightly different because we've got a number in front of our x squared. So what we do is that we've got a common factor there of 3. Okay, so we pull the 3 out the front. So if we pull 3 away from negative 21x, we end up with negative 7x. If we pull 3 away from 36, we end up with 12. What essentially happens is that that 3 will disappear, because if we divide it over the other side, because that's times by 3, 0 divided by 3 is just 0. So what we do, we write out, we're going to factorise as usual. So we're going to find 2 numbers that multiply together to get plus 12 and add together to get negative 7. And here's our factors of plus 12. We know they've both got to be negative because they've both got to add together to get a negative number. Okay, so if we look at that one, those 2 must be negative 3 and negative 4. So if we factorise, the 3 will disappear because it's dividing through the other side with the 0. And we get x minus 3 equals 0 and x minus 4 is 0. So x is 3 and x equals 4. Now this is one of the ones where we have to do step 1 first. So we've got to move all the terms to one side, leaving 0 on the other. Okay, so we're going to take everything over to the left hand side. So we're going to take minus 4x and minus 5. And we put it equal to 0. So again, we're looking for factors of negative 5 that will add together to get minus 4. So factors of negative 5, well, it's just 1 and 5. One has to be positive, one has to be negative, but it's got to add together to get negative 4. So it's got to be 1 and negative 5, because 1 minus 5 is negative 4. So we put those 2 in brackets, and we've got plus 1 and negative 5. Put both of them equal to 0. And we end up with x is negative 1 and x is 5. Right, we've got over the page. So we've got these ones here. So again, we move everything over to the one side. So we put that equal to 0. Okay, this one is slightly different because it hasn't got a number at the end of it. Okay, so what we have got though is that we've got x being a common factor, so we're going to pull that one out the front. So if I remove this x from there, I end up with 2x minus 5 left in the brackets. Now treat x as a bracket, so we're going to let each bracket equal 0. So we're going to let x equal 0, so therefore 0 must be one of the solutions for x. Okay, and the other solution is the 2x minus 5, so the other bracket is also equal to 0. So we solve it for that side, add 5 to each side first. So we've got 2x equals 5, divide by 2 then, and our last step is we divide by 2 to get x equals 5 over 2. With f, x squared equals 49. Okay, again we put it equal to 0. Now we need to find there's 0x in the middle of it. So if we look in the middle of here, there's 0x. So you can kind of think of it, sorry, it's a bit messy. You've got to think of two numbers that multiply to get negative 49 and add together to get 0. So those numbers are plus 7 and minus 7. It's actually also the difference of two squares if you've already done difference of two squares. So we just let both of those equal 0. So x is positive 7 and x is minus 7. And that's solving quadratic equations.